Two men, passionate actors, closest of friends. Born just 4 days apart, they share more than just being of the same generation, but a legacy that helped to define many generations. Now, they can finally look back with the only other person on the planet who can truly identify with their amazing journey, to boldly go where neither man has gone before, and along the way, reveal the secrets behind the voyage of a lifetime.
This is a beautiful setting.
Thank you.
Reflecting the beauty that is in you and your wife.
Did you know?
Mostly your wife.
Give a little, take a little. Give a compliment, take it away.
Never be totally generous.
Did you know that I used to drive a taxi in this neighborhood?
No.
I did.
Come on.
I did.
We are in one of the better sections, and perhaps the best section, but who's counting, of Los Angeles, and you drove a cab up here, ferrying the movie stars to their homes?
1956.
There were no movie stars up here.
10 years before you and I met.
It was all oil money.
And I was just out of the Army. And while I was in the Army, I got married, and my daughter Julie was born in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Army Post Hospital. And my wife was expecting our second baby. I came out of the Army with no money and very little in the way of any career expectations. And I had to pay the rent. So the first thing I did was take a job driving a taxi, nights.
So that's wild. Did you make any money?
I went a long time before I could actually make a living as an actor. I mean, from the time I decided to be an actor, when I was about 17, to the time that we met and started to do Star Trek, when I was about 35, about 18 years there, about 15 years of it actually here in Los Angeles looking for work as an actor. I never had a job that lasted any longer than 2 weeks as an actor.
So what would you have made in those 2 weeks? Or what did those 15 years average out as an actor?
Oh, very little, very little. The money was very small. But living expenses were not that high either. And I always worked at something else. I would always take some kind of a job in working at a market or driving a taxi or delivering newspapers or working in a pet shop.
So give me an idea of how much money you made in a year.
As an actor?
Yes.
A couple $1,000,
Really?
$4,000, $5,000.
It was a big year. It was
10 was my goal. I thought if I make 10, I could support a family.
And in those years, 10,000 would have
supported a family. Tell me about your early years. We never talked about that.
Well, I had exactly the opposite experience. I started...
You made great fortunes instantly.
Piddling amounts constantly.
So
but
how come...
But I always made money at
How come
acting.
you had an easier time of it than I did then?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. Well, the flip answer is obvious, but rather than go there, it is...
Are you better looking than I am?
No.
Are you more talented than me?
No, see, I brought my glasses to show you that I don't really need them. It is, in fact, luck.
I had a number of years of what's known as building character. Character building years.
But do you think that made you bitter at all?
No, on the contrary, I'm very grateful. I was bitter then, yes. I was very unhappy, very angry.
Angry? Now, who are you angry at?
It was a very general kind of anger. In those years, the studios had, as I'm sure you recall, a certain kind of structure for actors they would put on the contract and use them in movie and move them along, hopefully from smaller roles to bigger and bigger and bigger roles, and then maybe to stardom. My problem was that the people that they were hiring were blonde, charming looking guys, blue-eyed, handsome young guys like you. So I became angry at you.
That's the answer.
That's where it began. I had great confidence, and I didn't want to be dealt with lightly. I didn't want to be dismissed lightly. I wanted to be taken seriously. That was a major thrust for me, to be taken seriously.
So,
and to retain as much dignity as possible under tough circumstances.
Okay, now, that's so interesting. That statement right there.
Yeah.
Okay, because the Leonard I know is that man filled with
anger.
No. Art.
Yeah.
The love of art, the love of people, the love of life, the love of food, the love of... Look at your beautiful home, it reflects you. They now say, got this wonderful part, I'm going to put ears on you. And we may snip off the ears, the old story of maybe we snip them off, maybe we don't snip them off, and you're going to do a mind meld, and you're going to hold up your hand and make I know, yeah, see, I can't do that. That was your Judaic idea. The wonderful creation you made as Mr. Spock does not carry with it the elements of dignity and taken seriously that you're talking about. You would rather have been Hamlet.
Well, let's back up for a moment. My hope and dream was to make a living as an actor and to play character roles. And what really attracted me and made the Spock character valid for me, made it worthwhile pursuing, was the idea that this character had a very interesting internal life. Internal life based on a genetic conflict, a human mother and a Vulcan father. That conflict, that internal conflict, gave me a sense that there was something constantly brewing in this character. This character was constantly working on himself in some way, was constantly conscious of this internal struggle, and therefore was alive. I think we all have these internal struggles. I think young people go through periods where they're trying to figure out how to balance the right brain versus the left, how to balance their logic and the things that must get done and that are real versus their emotions, which may or may not be based on reality.
I understand all that.
So it gave me a life.
You brought your art
right
to this part.
Well, that's a nice way of putting it.
Well, no, it's true.
I agree.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and a certain amount of craft.
No, not a certain amount. You brought a great deal of craft and a great deal of art to the part of Mr. Spock.
Right.
But you still can't get past the fact that what we all were performing in was, a series, it was cartoonish.
Now we get to that. Now, you're absolutely right.
So when they say Spock, Mr. Spock, it's not, hey, loved your Hamlet.
No.
Okay? So it doesn't fit with the picture you wanted to paint.
No, so there was a constant struggle to keep the focus on the dignity of the work, and there was a constant concern that the work should not be seen as frivolous and silly. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
So
how do you deal with people saying, "Hey, where's your pointed ears?"
Right. That would destroy it.
Painful.
Yeah.
You've touched on something I had forgotten about. That struggle to keep the show, the characters, our work focused in an area that could be taken seriously and not be seen silly and frivolous. And you remind me of the quintessential demonstration of that struggle. We were doing a press conference maybe a month before the airing of the first show. The press had never seen our show. And each of us were assigned a group of reporters, and we moved from one to the other to answer questions. And they were putting questions to me like, what's the show about, and what's the character you play, and you play a character with pointed ears, and he's from another planet, and but you got to understand, we're doing really interesting stories. We're doing stories about overpopulation. We're doing stories about racial issues. We're doing stories about the ecology. We're doing stories about loyalty and brotherhood and helping each other and that sort of thing. But you play a character with pointed ears, yes, but this is a very interesting character, very intelligent, a great dignity, great sense of himself as a person, and a functional person, of a scientist, bright man, and so forth. Okay, so the next day, you and I are playing a scene on stage that's being filmed, and this group of reporters are brought in to watch us film the scene. And the scene has me lying on the bed in sick bay, and I'm laying there prostrate, green blood dripping from my forehead. You come rushing in and say, "What happened, Spock?" I say, "Captain, the monster attacked me." So, in a moment, all that conversation is gone.
I got another moment to remind you of, apropos of that. My father died while we were in the first year, and I leaned on you literally and figuratively for support during those hours between filming, hearing my father died at lunch. He died in Miami. I had to fly to Miami that evening, and I made the conscious decision to continue working that afternoon because there was nothing else for me to do. Then I couldn't remember my lines. So we fumbled our way through an afternoon's work, which was probably discarded on Monday. In any case, I was gone the weekend. And when I came back, in shock from grief of my beloved father, we picked up on a scene. And this was a segment that had the Horta. I've forgotten the name of the show.
The name of the show was Devil in the Dark.
Devil in the Dark. And we had our hands on the Horta.
Right.
And the Horta was
dangerous creature.
Dangerous creature. And the creature was sending out, you were doing a mind meld.
Yes.
With the Horta.
Yes.
And we had shot all your stuff while I was gone. Yes. I guess it was a Tuesday, and I was good. And on Monday, you had shot all your shots. And now we were reversing on me on Tuesday, yes. So they didn't miss a beat on the schedule. And you, off screen, were playing full out to give me, your friend, some of the feeling you had had when you were performing.
For you to react to it.
For me to react to it. You were feeling the Horta, and you realized the Horta was in pain, and out of the depths of your soul, you said, pain, pain. And I, in my shock, wanting to show everybody it's okay, I'm all right, we'll be okay, I said, get that man an aspirin. Everybody laughed but you. Until now. You didn't speak to me for weeks.
I remember it very well.
And I didn't realize what I had tapped into. I was coming off of something else.
Yes.
You were coming to this part with that.
Making a commitment.
Making a commitment, not only for that moment, but in general.
Yes.
To hell with the ears, I'm bringing dignity and craft and art to this part.
Yes.
And now I'm being discounted by bringing this man an aspirin by this actor who never drove a cab. He never flushed a.
He never worked in a pet shop.
How dare he? I never realized.
You want an aspirin?
Yeah, right. You think I need an aspirin? You need a knuckle sandwich. we went on. But until this moment, I never fully comprehended how I tread.
What you stepped
what
into.
I trod on. And you were in the Army, not in the Marines, but don't tread on me, I guess was your motto.
That's funny. What do you remember about the very first time? Well, how did you get the job? Did they call you and say, we'd like you to play this role?
That's exactly what happened, Leonard. They had made, as you well know, because you were in it, a pilot for NBC, and it didn't sell. And Jeffrey Hunter was in the pilot. NBC wanted Gene Roddenberry to do a rewrite or do another script. He fired everybody, with the exception of yourself. And as you know, what you did on that pilot, the first pilot, you completely reworked on the second show. So they offered me the job. I looked at the pilot. I saw an interesting show, and I saw the reason why it didn't sell. Everybody was taking themselves so importantly, so seriously, one. And two is there was no humor. I guess they're related. But it was ponderous in that it went along, because everybody was being out in space. And a corollary of that was there was no humor. Yeah. So when I talked about that, that was the two things that I
don't know if you've ever heard me talk about the difference between my playing against Jeffrey Hunter and playing against you. Have you ever heard? Well, you might find this interesting. I've always said that one of the reasons for the shift in the Spock character when you came on board was because when I was working with Jeffrey Hunter was a very internalized actor, very fine actor, very intelligent man. This was his style of work. He was very internalized, very thoughtful. There's an old joke about two actors preparing to play a scene, and one says to the other, what are you going to play in this scene? And the fellow says, I'm playing nothing. The other one says, no, you can't play nothing, I'm playing nothing. So here's Jeffrey Hunter playing this quiet, internalized performance. And I felt the need to help drive something in opposition to that.
Right,
Otherwise, we're both playing nothing.
Right.
And when you came on board with your energy and a sense of humor and a twinkle in the eye, I was able to then become the cooler Spock.
you smiled in the first one and never smiled
No,
again.
never again. That's right.
And that is a tectonic shift.
Yes.
And that required either you worked from instinct the moment and you realized several days later, hey, I didn't smile, I'm not going to.
Right.
Or you planned it and said, I didn't like what I did there. I think this is better.
No, I knew it was a mistake after the fact. When I saw it, I thought it destroys a mystique. It destroys the design of this person. This person smiling is not appropriate. This person is not necessarily a negative or dour person, but this person is not a frivolous person. This person must be played as a scientist and a student of what's going on.
But what is interesting to me about that is you chose to have the dignity and the seriousness of purpose that you talked about being of yourself.
Yes.
You invested in the character.
Yes.
You also carried that out off screen.
Oh, I couldn't help it.
We'd sit around the set like this, and I'd be telling a joke about two actors who said, I'm playing nothing, no, you can't. You,
and what would I do?
You wouldn't laugh.
No, no. No.
You would sit there like you are now.
Yeah.
And look at me.
I'd study it.
You'd study it. And no matter how funny I thought it was.
Oh. It was, I had a problem with that. I had a problem on weekends. You play a character like that, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Most of your waking life then is in that character. And I find it very difficult to turn it on and turn it off. So stepping out of the set and into a chair waiting for the next setup, I couldn't shift out of it that easy.
Leonard, I'm gonna question you on that.
Okay.
Okay? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Because you are a professional actor, and we know that we go to work, we take on the character, makeup, costume, wardrobe, everything, put on the voice, put on the thing, put on the look, try and make it real. Cut, it's over, cup of coffee, cigarette, how are you doing, what'd you do over the weekend? End of day, wrap, take off the makeup, get the thing, fine. Would you like to go have a drink? Would you like to go to a party? Would you like to go, okay, great. We carry on our lives. Just because we're actors, your life went on, your other life, your real, or the other life of the non-actor.
Don't you carry home, depending on the role you're playing, don't you carry home off stage something of the character?
No.
Well, I can't.
You carried home, even to this day?
No, not today. No, not today. Today is different. As a matter of fact, when I was doing Star Trek IV, the energy of communicating with people as a director and then stepping into a scene as Spock was very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Wow.
Very difficult.
Wow.
Like wrenching. Really very painful in a way. Because I would be concerned, I've got to play the scene in a few moments, and as a director, I want to be somebody else. But I found myself constraining myself as a director, trying to stay somewhere closer to the character so I wouldn't have to do such a major shift when it came time to play the scene. So I'd be talking to you or somebody else about how the scene's going to go, you're going to be here, and the camera's going to be over there. But I would find myself gauging the energy that went into it in such a way that I wouldn't have such a distance to travel back to the character when I stepped into the scene. I couldn't help that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a way of working that comes from training, early training.
There's a certain kind of training, yeah. I believed in making that investment in the character, particularly that kind of character that was so boxed, so specific. How did you feel about when the show became successful and you found yourself on the street, people yelling, "Hey, Kirk!" How did that feel to you?
I'd never had that experience before. I mean, I'd been a popular actor and I'd done things that people recognized before, but they never called me by the name of the character.
Character identification.
The character identification. So I kind of disparaged it. I thought to myself, what is that? That's crazy. And then the same thing with these conventions that started after the show got popular or sometime after the show was canceled as it got more popular. Conventions started and people, they started asking us to go to conventions. And I'm not going to go to it. That's not dignified. Actors don't go to conventions. That's for mobs. It's mob psychology, and I wasn't going to do that.
So was it all negative for you, the celebrity and the stardom?
In a way, yes, and then with a quick twist, no.
What's the twist?
The twist is, as we are talking, I'm planning on leaving your home. I got to perform in Las Vegas. I'm going to go to New York, do some spectacular things, and see some spectacular things because I'm a celebrity. Saturday, I perform in New York. Sunday, I perform in Houston, and I'm back here. And I've done a whirlwind performance, exciting life, lights, limousines, great restaurants, you know. It's the fantasy of what people think Hollywood is. We know it isn't, but it is the fantasy of what it is. So I'm living the fantasy of a celebrity by this performance and by these
enjoying it.
And enjoying it, having the greatest time. Taking my wife and I, and we'll just have the most wonderful time.
And you have opportunities to be creative.
And opportunities to be creative in a non-diagrammed way, in a totally informal way. So that's the beauty of the celebrity. What isn't pretty is the lack of privacy in every.
And when they yell Kirk at you now, do you feel any differently than you did 30 years ago?
I still got a little twinge. It's like a.
Do you wave back? Do
reflex.
you ignore it? What do you do?
It depends how I'm feeling.
Do you sign autographs on the street?
Rarely, and the reason I do that now is because mostly they want me to sign pictures that I know they're going to sell.
There's a lot of commerce has entered in.
Yeah, and I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
So I say, I know you're selling those pictures. And they say, no, I promise you we're not. I said, no, you are, and I'm not signing it.
I resent it when I get a sense that we're being stalked. If you get off an airplane in LA or New York and there's a bunch of people waiting with Star Trek pictures there.
That's what I mean.
Somebody has called those people and said, he's on this plane.
So they know everything about you. They know where you stayed. They know where you stayed.
I resent that. I resent that. But in general, I feel a great sense of warmth and positive support comes from most people. Those are prickly circumstances and they're troublesome. But in general, I feel good about it. And above all, I'm very grateful. And it took me a while, but I got rid of all that anger. That went away when I realized that I have never had to worry about work ever since Star Trek went on the air.
Right. Let me go to the anger part again.
Yeah.
And how you dealt with that anger off screen. How did you try and suppress it?
The worst moment, the worst focal period for me was shortly after we began shooting the series, when I had this fantasy that I had found a home as an actor, that all of the previous work that I had done, literally, they would have your name on the dressing room door in chalk. Literally, there was time it would be in chalk or taped on with a piece of tape that could be ripped off when you're done. And the next person comes into the dressing room and they wipe you off and you're gone. The parking space never had a permanent sign on it. Suddenly there's a parking space with a permanent sign, a dressing room with a name painted on the door that you know is going to be there for a few months. That was extraordinary to me. And I thought I'd found a family. My brother, the writers and producers were the father figures, sisters who were actresses on the show. It was a family to me. I looked forward each day to coming to go to work with my family, my artistic, creative family. And when I began to discover that the studio was not necessarily your friend or your father or your parent or your relative in any way, that they were contract people studying to see how much are we paying him, and if he asks for any more, tell him we'll get somebody else to wear the ears, that kind of thing. He wants a phone in his dressing room. Is it in the contract? No, no phone. No. He wants to get off on Friday to go. No. He has to work till 6:15. You know, that kind of thing. And there was no give. There was no dealing in a familial way. That made me very confused.
And angry.
And angry, very angry. And I went into therapy over it.
Really?
Yeah. I started seeing a doctor a couple of times a week.
While we were shooting?
Yeah. And it was all about that issue. Why is this happening? Why can't we have reasonable conversations about things? Why are they being so dictatorial? Why do they seem to be so angry at me? we are loved by the fans. We're getting all this fan mail. We get adulation in the press, in the fan magazines. We go out in the street, people yell at us, hey, Star Trek, hey, Spock, hey, Kirk. Why is the studio acting so offstandish? Why are the producers acting so standoffish?
Did your therapist have any answers?
Well, no, I didn't go to him for answers. I went to kind of talk it out, to feel it out. And I realized that was a fantasy that I had. That it's all about contract. It's not about marriage. It's not about relationship. It's not about love. We didn't come together because we love each other. We came together because we have to do business with each other. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we love each other. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a family. And that was very disappointing to me. But I finally had to learn about it. And then the anger started to dissipate.
Really?
Then I developed a peace about it. I came to terms with it. And I became peaceful about it.
So by the third year, you were peaceful about it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Were you anxious about it?
I would become more calculating in my relationship with the studio. I would think, if I want X or Y, I better get my agent prepared for the next time they call us about something they want me to do, and have him say, well, you know, Leonard has always felt that he should have such and such. How about you give him that, and he'll give you such and such. I learned to negotiate. I learned to negotiate.
And did you learn to negotiate in your personal life?
That took a lot longer.
Because negotiating in your personal life, negotiating relationships, which is what a relationship is,
yeah.
And it's not necessarily calculating or cunning
no, in a personal life there should be love. There has to be love.
Love,
it's
but a negotiation. Love is a negotiation of.
But it's a different kind of negotiation. You're not there
Right.
because you have to do business with each other.
No, but I mean an emotional negotiation. You don't get angry right away. You give somebody the space, or you give somebody who wants that you love, who wants something diametrically opposed to what you want.
You quit smoking while we were shooting the series, and I had great admiration for that. Was it the second or third season? Do you remember?
Second, I think.
You just quit. And I remember there were times when you were desperate because the nicotine wasn't out of your system, and your body was craving that nicotine. I remember one time we finished shooting a scene, and you walked out the door off the set into another part of the stage, and I heard you yelling, "I want a cigarette!" I thought, he's fighting that demon. Fighting that demon. And you did it. I didn't do it until 20 years later. I remember that? You remember
I do remember that.
Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I smoked, and
so did I.
And I had 3 kids, and so did you. And when I go to kiss my kids, they'd say, "Oh, Daddy, you smell."
Really?
And one day I was in a car, a limo, with 3 or 4 other actors, all of whom were trying to give up smoking, and each one had a motive for giving up smoking. I don't like it to control me. I don't like it. Mine was I didn't like my kids not turning away because I smelled of smoke. And so I had no problem, other than the few instances of giving it up. But I discovered over the years that I'm not an addictive personality.
I am.
And you are.
I am. I thought perhaps I could smoke
that.
a little bit. That I cannot do a thing like smoking a little. If I smoke a little, I end up smoking a lot. If I drink a little, I end up drinking a lot. I was developing a major drinking habit.
When did that start?
I started drinking regularly, ritually, during probably the second year or third year of our series.
Really?
Yeah.
Up until then, no problem?
I drank occasionally, not a problem. I'd have a glass of wine or a drink after work, 2 maybe, no problem. But the ritual became so ingrained and so important to me because I looked forward to that release at the end of the pressure of the day with the dialogue and the pace and get the 15 pages or 12 pages done today and all of that sort of thing. So my secretary was in the habit of bringing me a drink in a paper cup. And I'd call her at about 6 o'clock. I'd say, we'll be finished in 10 minutes. And she would know that means be down here with a paper cup with a drink. And the minute we finished the last shot, I would have a drink. And then it became a series of drinks, and little by little, before I knew it, I was drinking more and more because my addictive personality was taking over.
Before you knew it, is how long?
Oh, a matter of a year or two. Over a period of a year or 2 or 3, it became very serious.
And what is serious?
Well, to the point where I could no longer control how much I was drinking. I would make myself promises that I couldn't keep. That's when I started to lose my self-respect. I would say, I'd be drinking midday on a Saturday or Sunday and end up passing out, in bed. I'd go to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and sleep through to the next day. Miss a party in my own home, that kind of thing. People coming, and I'd be out. I'd promised myself, now this weekend, that's not going to happen. This weekend, I won't do more than have a beer or two on Saturday, maybe, and not earlier than 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by 11, I'd be on the beer, and by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, onto liquor, and pass out again. And then I realized that I had a serious problem, that I had become an alcoholic.
Where did that take you, that alcoholism?
Well, it took me into a territory where, as I say, the looking forward to the drink became a very important part of my experience. And I always took great pride and great comfort in the fact that it never interfered with my work, because no matter how long I had to go without alcohol, if I was working, I did. I went without.
So you never had the experience of passing out someplace where you didn't want to be?
No, the most frightening experiences I've ever had were occasionally driving home and not remembering the drive, wondering, how did I get here? I could have.
Did you black out at any other time?
No, I don't remember ever blacking out.
So you had a problem, but wasn't like, what was the term that was used?
I was not a fall down,
hard case.
obvious fall down drunk, but I'm sure that people could see that I wasn't energetic. I would become reclusive. I would become distant, remote, quiet, not there. You know.
As you know, I leaned on you yet once again when I was dealing with my wife, who had an alcoholic problem. And I remember you telling me, as we were seated something like this, when I said I was going to get married, you said, but she's an alcoholic. And I said I loved her. And that, I guess the implication was that my love would cure her. And I thought so at the time. It is a strange affliction. And as you say, each individual is different. Noreen was drinking from a very early age. It was part of her lifestyle, family, in the same way as your dad. A beer or a drink after work was not a big deal. So alcohol was part of her upbringing, as it was not mine, as was smoking was not mine. And so I married her, knowing that she had a drinking problem, but not totally understanding that. Never understanding the pain that she had. And I think somewhere in that mix, drawing the parallel between Noreen and yourself, that anger, that word crops up in your vocabulary a lot, that maybe that alcohol was assuaging the anger. So the pain in Noreen, I only had the insight into what she must have been feeling when the pain of her death overwhelmed me. Did I begin to think, good Lord, is this what Noreen was feeling all the time? And as a result, was alcohol the only way of anesthetizing the pain? And I tend to think that that's what happened.
Younger people have a belief, I've seen it in a number of cases, including Noreen's, that I'm young. In time, I will stop this.
So of course, you heard Noreen express herself.
Yes. But I don't have to yet.
Right.
I'm not there yet.
Right.
I still have a couple of runs to go.
Right.
And I had reached the point where I thought, I've got to stop now. And I got help. I went to a program, and the program worked for me. I was blessed, absolutely blessed to find a program. I haven't had a drink now, and I think I'm coming up on 13 years, and about 15 or 16 years of not smoking. I feel blessed on both counts, but I'm particularly lucky that it came to me, that the habit grew to the power that it did in my later years, because I didn't have that thought, I'm young, I still have a distance to go, which is a devilish part of the disease. Did you ever have battles with management? Any? Management or producers?
I didn't have no. I did not have them like that. One battle that I do remember was Gene Roddenberry bringing a little pin, which he called the Idic, and saying, I want you to wear this pin. And I said, what is an Idic? Yeah. And he said, it's the International Defense Fund or something or other. And I said, but this is a merchandising thing, isn't it? He said, well, we'll make a few dollars on it. And I realized this was what...
He wanted you to function as a billboard.
So I didn't want to do that. So I said, no, I am not going to wear this pin. And they said, you got to wear the pin. I said, I'm not going to wear the pin. So I think they went to you. And they said, Leonard, and nobody was going to wear the pin. But I led that fight for the moment. And so I had some battles on those fronts. Gene wanted to do...
You were looking for dignity, too. You were looking to preserve dignity, too.
Well, I was in a different position. I was playing a leading man. I was playing a Greek hero. I was playing a guy who got the girl and won the fight.
Right.
And had to make a decision. Ooh, that's intellectual. Ooh, that's emotional. Not really, because I was on the horns of the dilemma that the protagonist-antagonist classical storytelling form takes. I was functioning well. I was in my milieu. I could doff the wardrobe and the character.
But you didn't want it cheapened.
That's exactly right. I still thought of myself as a theater actor,
right.
and that this was
playing a character of stature.
If this was important, then it was important enough for me to have that dignity, right. Exactly, and fighting for the lines and the script and the story and going in. I didn't think of it as animosity. I thought of it as this can be better.
Right.
And I don't know how to make this better. Do you know how to make this better? Or I know how to make this better. Here's my idea.
Right.
What do you mean you're not listening to me?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Well, we don't have time. What do you got to go?
Which I always admired greatly. You had a tremendous amount of energy every day, all day long to make it better.
I have that same feeling in everything I do.
Yeah.
That you and I are talking to each other. Are we examining the deepest points of our lives
right.
in this small amount of time?
Right.
I'm constantly examining myself to see if I can make what I'm doing
the best out of it.
The best out of it. And that's the way I felt about that. But there were battles that you and I got into with management that some of them haven't been told.
Right. Gene Coon, do you remember him?
Very well.
Gene Coon, my sense of him, my image of him, was the guy in the old newspaper movies, the old black and white movies, where there was a newspaper guy who was an editor or a writer. He wore a slouch hat, and he worked under a lamp with a green shade, and he had a cigarette dangling from his mouth, and he was pounding away in the typewriter like that. And he'd say, "I'll be ready in 10 minutes. Hold the copy. Hold the presses. It was that kind of a guy. And if you walked into his office, you'd find him doing that. He pounded out some of our best material.
Yeah, he did.
A lot of people don't realize
right.
that. And he gave us the Klingons. He created that whole world of ideas that had to do with conflict.
Well, Gene Roddenberry didn't write that many of the scripts.
No, he only wrote about 3 of the 79, is my memory, maybe 4.
Yeah.
Gene Coon wrote a lot of them, and a lot of other writers wrote a lot of them.
So Gene Roddenberry's artistry was putting the package together.
And holding to a concept.
I was just going to say, and insisting, that wonderful story of NBC wanting to clip the ears
right.
off the picture of you,
right.
and him holding to that,
right.
and them saying, but he's a devilish character. And no, Gene, to his credit, because it's so easy.
Saved my character.
As you and I know, yeah. It is so easy to say to the network, to the blue suits, as we call them, mm-hmm. Oh, well, if that's what you want, we'll do that.
Right.
In order to ease the way.
Absolutely. Your research says this is a problem? All right, fine, we'll find some other way to do that.
Right, if that's your research, right. Then we'll listen to your research, because you guys must know.
Now, here was Gene Coon in the trenches, pounding away, and one day a script came down with a scene in it that had me doing something to which I took strong objection. And I went to his office. I think you and I would both agree that on a television series, once they deliver that script, and they're starting to work on next week's script, which is in terrible shape and needs a lot of work. The last thing they want is an actor coming in and saying, this doesn't work for me.
As we well know.
Because they get out of here, just go do it. I'm working on a worse script than that for next week.
Exactly.
Worse problem than that. So I walk into his office and in effect say, I've got a problem with this scene. What's the matter? I said, well, you've got me doing such and such, and I can't because it doesn't follow what I did before. I don't agree with it or whatever. Well, just do it. You know, no, I can't. If you don't, all right, then all right. This conversation's over. I left his office. I come back to the stage. There's a phone call for me, and it's my agent on the phone. He said, did something happen? I said, yeah, I just had a confrontation with Gene Coon. Why? He said, you're being suspended. I said, really? Wow. Well, I knew he couldn't possibly really say to me, don't come to work anymore, because this is a machine, and if you pull a cog out of it, the machine's going to stop.
Absolutely.
You know? So in my arrogance, I said to my agent, ask him, do I have to finish the day or can I leave now?
What happened?
Well, the next call was from Gene Roddenberry, who said, nobody's suspended, right? Let's talk about this, you know. We went to his office, he and I and Gene Coon, and we hammered out a solution. I really felt badly about it because I didn't want to offend Gene Coon. I had great respect for him and great respect for the position that I was putting him in. I was saying, I need you to fix this. I need you to get your mind off of the problem you're dealing with for next week and fix this because I'm having trouble. And those kind of things go on all the time.
Yeah, but those kind of things are common. And people in every series on television have those disagreements and discussions.
Did we have disagreements, you and I?
You and I?
Yeah.
If I didn't have some prior knowledge to this question based on some years ago, I would have forgotten that we had any animosity, any differences at all. And that I would have said, no, I can't recall any of them, because I can't. I do remember one. And there was a reporter coming in to interview you. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning. It was makeup time. And he was coming into the makeup room, and we all got made up together. It took you 3 hours. It took me 15 minutes. I mean, that literally is the truth. I'd go in and put on a pancake, and you had the ears and the stuff, and you were there for hours. So that became a place in your life that you needed to spend part of your life in that, because you were spending 3 hours and 1 hour removal. At the end of the day, it's 4 hours in a makeup room. It was another home for you. Right. Whereas for me, it's toss off a few jokes, get a couple of laughs, warm up for the day's work, and then. So I said I didn't want the reporter there while I got made up, and that somehow offended you, and we got into a disagreement. I don't remember what it was. It's obviously nonsense now, but I would say that was one place where you.
But we were reported in the press as having troubles, as being in conflict. Do you remember any of that?
What do you remember?
I think there was a lot made of very little, is right. my memory of it. Right. And because the press loves conflict, they love to have, there's trouble on the Star Trek set.
But we did have disagreements with management on other things. Movies, for example.
The making of the first movie, for me, was a very tough time. And you and I, my memory of it was we agreed that the script needed help, and we struggled and struggled and struggled.
We'd sit in either one of our dressing rooms and go over how we could improve the plot.
Right. There were 2 or 3 moments that I recall that we came up with, and a couple of them found their way into the movie. One was the whole idea of treating V'ger as a child. I said something to you about V'ger is acting like a child, let's treat it as a child. And you created the whole thing about, all right, everybody off the bridge, you stay here. We're leaving V'ger alone on the bridge, and she kind of became somewhat childlike. Where are you going? Where are you going? And she started making the ship shake and that kind of thing. And we were trying to create some sense of energy and activity going on.
Right.
There was another moment that had to do with Spock's spacesuit is suddenly missing. And somebody says, I think he's out, I think he's left the ship, and you go rushing off and get on a spacesuit to go chasing after Spock.
We were trying to get some action going.
Exactly.
But here's what I do remember, that you and I came up with some ideas that we thought were really good.
Yes.
In the middle of shooting.
Yes.
We go to Bob Wise, the director.
Yes.
You threw me the ball.
Right.
I should tell the story.
Right.
I trot out all my bells and whistles.
Right.
And I tell what you and I have devised as an improvement on the plot.
We're looking for a major event near the ending of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And I dramatized for Bob Wise what we thought was good. And Bob Wise sits back and says, hey, that's good.
Right.
I want you to tell this to Gene Roddenberry.
Right.
Okay?
The writer.
The writer.
Producer. Creator.
Right. So we had spent the afternoon performing for each other how we would do this.
Rehearsed.
Well rehearsed. I'd gone in, that was the afternoon performance. I'd done my evening performance with Bob.
Right.
When it came time to tell Gene the story, whether we were intimidated, I was intimidated or not.
It shrank.
It wasn't as good. It never made its way into the movie.
I remember that. Yeah. It's like the energy had gone out of it earlier in the afternoon.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah. There was something intimidating about telling Gene what should be done to his script.
Yes, I remember the light was like overhead and his face was shadowed, and it looked very intimidating.
It was a very difficult time.
Difficult in the movie, the first movie.
In the making of that movie, The whole project was a difficult time.
Yeah.
In all fairness, it had been 11 years since we'd made the series, and there were always all these questions about, should the ship be the same? Should it have changed? Should the costumes be the same? Should the characters refer to this 11-year gap? And say, gee, it's been 11 years since we've been together, or should we just ignore it? How do you deal with that? You know, very difficult, very difficult. And the result was not the most satisfying result. Do you have a copy of this?
Yeah.
Hirschfeld?
Oh, you know I don't. Wait a minute, I don't have a copy of that.
Take it, it's yours.
Okay.
What
are you laughing at?
Take it home.
Okay, I will. Send this home.
I think this is the first TV Guide cover we ever had.
How many TV Guide covers did we have?
I don't know. I lost track, but I believe that was the first one. This is us, the Siamese twins.
Yes, you and I joined at the hip.
Now, I don't want you to think that Star Trek was my first science fiction.
Leonard, I see that. Zombies. What do you think about all this merchandising?
I can't. I still cannot. I still cannot completely get around it somehow. I can't. It's hard to believe. It's a strange experience.
It's an industry, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think that billions, what did they tell us? Billions, $2 billion?
Star Trek, the industry, is in a class by itself.
Oh, boy. That's my favorite picture of us.
What year was that?
Who knows? All I know is I was getting I cracked a joke, and there was no laugh. Here's an actor.
Flop sweat.
Flop sweat. Here's the definition of flop sweat.
Well, yeah, Mom. Is it warm in here, or is it just me?
Or am I just sweating? Well, that's my metabolism.
Here's my Vulcan.
Oh,
cap.
no. Leonard, Vulcan, the USS Vulcan.
Yeah.
Did they name it after the
Coast Guard ship. Coast Guard ship called the Vulcan.
And then you got the Enterprise.
Well, of course.
This whole house is dedicated to Star Trek.
No, not the whole house. Just a little corner.
I feel that if you know someone for the number of years you and I have known each other, it's almost like a debt. You almost like, hey, perforce, you know each other. Perforce, you have something so much in common that if there were no affection for each other, you'd still be bonded by the length of years you've known each other. And so I feel that in some lesser way, a lot lesser way, with the rest of the cast. What I don't
Do you feel affection for them?
Because I feel affronted. I feel that I've been assailed by some of them. In defense, I thought, oh, well, then I don't like them. But that's childish, because I have no feeling of animosity. I never never understood their reasons for what I've read as their distaste of me. I was interviewing Nichelle Nichols, and I said, great, Nichelle, it was a great interview. Thank you so much. I was closing up this for a book I was writing. She said, well, wait a minute. Don't you want to hear how much we hate you? So I turned back.
Did she really say that?
She actually said, wait a minute. Do you want to hear how much we hate you? I thought, what? What was that all about? And then I turned on the machine, and she said, well, because you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and you never talked to us when we were on the set. It was like outlandish. To me, it was like outlandish stuff and childish. And
what do you think that's about? Where does that come from?
I have no idea. I wondered if you knew.
I had one incident with one of the actors one night. We were shooting one of the movies, and I was finished for the evening, had cleaned up my makeup, was walking on the lot at night, dark, to my car. Here's this actor walking along ahead of me more slowly than I and as I'm passing to him, I said, "Good night, so-and-so," and he wouldn't respond. Didn't respond. That's kind of strange. I just kept on walking, went to my car. The next day, in a group of people, casually, I said, "Well, you know, I said good night to you last night, and you didn't respond to me." And he said, "Do you want to know why?" I thought, you know, I'm not sure I really do. The point is that, if there is a point here, it's that there are unknown, unexpected, and sort of secret, hidden resentments that build up.
I've tried to explain it to myself in this way. You, DeForest, and I were the three people who were there every day.
Yes.
And we worked our lengthy day, come back the next day, and we were three buddies, really buddies for almost the whole time, some exceptions. They came in, the other members of the cast, on occasion, a day a week maybe, sometimes not.
Right.
And the show was over and everyone was happy, at least as far as I know. Then the convention started, and the actors would go to the conventions, and the audience would get up and applaud. And slowly, I think, the cast members began to consider themselves the leads in the film, and no longer wanted to take a back seat.
Interesting.
And their perception of what the reality was had changed.
So you think that all of this happened sort of post, after the making of the series?
I never got it. I never heard it. I never thought of anything but great. When I would meet them on after the show for our various meetings that we would have, I never got any sense of removal.
There's a kind of a Rashomon going on here to some extent. An incident takes place on a set, which is a highly charged emotional situation for people. Career dreams are being played out or failing or a combination of both. And you might say to 2 or 3 observers, what did you see happen here? And one says, "Oh, I saw great camaraderie." And the other says, "Oh God, I felt such awful tension." Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of thing. It's really hard. It's hard to understand what that resentment is all about, whether it's valid, whether it springs from some imagined or real slight of some kind.
Because the incidences that I've read about that has caused their resentment towards me have been so minute. Like, maybe that did happen, but how does that affect things, really?
Yes, I understand.
So
not easy to come to grips with.
No, I never fully understood where they were. Maybe that's the reason they resented me.
I don't know.
I never
Maybe.
fully comprehended what it was that was bothering them.
People would like to feel that a group of performers, as we are or were, that work together in a sort of a family way, a group of people solving problems together, really do have this camaraderie and this chemistry and meet regularly for barbecues.
I think of them with affection. And knowing them that as long as we did adds to the mystique of affection. So I'm puzzled by their reaction.
So you do feel affection for them?
Yes, removed, you know, I mean, an affection for
in a very personal way, but you have some...
yes, exactly, for the image, the person that one sees, as against the person inside who's looking at.
I'm always happy to see them when I bump into them at a convention or whatever. I don't spend any time with them because my life has gone off in other directions. Our lives have gone off in other directions. We are involved in other activities, we have other interests. Yours and mine meet much more often, which is wonderful because it puts us together more frequently and we choose to spend time with each other. But the fact that I like them or have respect for their contribution doesn't necessarily mean that I would seek them out to spend time with any more than 2 people who work side by side in some other capacity don't necessarily see each other. You see each other once in a while at a company project or whatever, some kind of a business event. But we have, both of us, very active, busy activities in lives and surrounded with other people, and that's the way life takes you where it takes you.
I understand that, but I still remain puzzled. Doing a series is backbreaking work. It's like coal mining. Although you might get some argument from the coal miners, still 14, 18 hours a day, day in, day out, all the mental and physical work that you're required to do is
It's hard.
It's life-consuming.
Yes.
So for the period of time you're doing a series, with publicity and all, even when the show is off the air, no longer filming, and coming back the following season, there are 3-4 months, but they're usually occupied too for one reason or another, and so there's barely any time for family. So in my own case, my family life suffered.
So did mine.
Both of ours.
Yeah.
And we lost our family, children and wife, children for a short period of time, wife obviously forever. So we married our wives for our various reasons, and lost our wives for the same reason.
Well, my marriage ended much later, but it was just a longer, slower process than yours, but it was the same process.
Right. I had a bad divorce, and essentially all the money that I'd been able to save was put into my now ex-wife, and my whole focus then became taking care of my kids. So I was lost and lonely. I got divorced in the middle of the series, and took affection from wherever I could find it. Not every week from every one of those beautiful girls who were on our show, but there was always someone around who had needs and needs to be fulfilled and needed to fulfill. So that romance and lust and passion all played a part in my life for years. I just wanted, and still do of course, to taste as much of life as possible, which meant, as you know, as we've eaten meals together, let's have that, let's have that, let's have that, and bring it for the table.
Right.
The variety of it,
Sure.
thinking maybe that's part of living,
Right.
and maybe that is an aspect of living for a while. And then finally, one learns to concentrate and focus.
So it's a combination of a lustful life and availability.
That's good. I'll take that. But it's also, I hasten to add, a learning process to then focus and absorb and be complete in
You feel
a
complete?
singular.
You feel complete.
Yeah, feeling really good about love and togetherness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had talks with your daughters about that period, about their memory of their relationship with you as a result of Star Trek in any way, or how it might have affected them?
I always kept my kids away from Star Trek. For the longest time, they didn't know what I did. Until they became 7, 8, 9 years old, they didn't know what that was all about. Even when I brought them, when they were 3 and 4, to the set, they didn't really know what it was.
Right.
So I kept Star Trek out of their consciousness for the longest time. So Star Trek itself, the entity, did not affect them, but their father's time consumption did. You know, and everybody suffered as a result of that.
You've talked about that?
Yes, over the years, I'm sure we did. It's long since been ameliorated. You know, my children are grown now. But certainly, Star Trek left its mark seared into the psyche of 3 children and an ex-wife.
Yeah. I'm still trying to ascertain to this day exactly what the real impact was. I know that for a very long time I was obsessed with the idea of making a living, and that when Star Trek came along, although we were never a gigantic hit originally, we were just kind of marginal, we just kind of stumbled along and struggled along for 3 seasons. We didn't become a big news event until years later when the show went into syndication. But in those early years, for me, the obsession was, I've caught a wave. It may not be a big wave, and it may be just one short-lived wave, and I've got to get the best out of it that I possibly can. Any opportunity I've got to grab. I've got to sock away some protection money, some security for the future, in case I should go back to what it was before, looking for work. I have no way of knowing. Coming out of this Spock character, will I ever be able to work again? Will I be hireable? How long will this last? What effect will it have on my future? I've got to protect myself. And that became my reason, my excuse, if you will, for being away from home a lot. Working.
And that affected your marriage?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it affected my relationship with my children. I think my children probably would say that they have had a love-hate relationship with Star Trek. They're very proud of what was accomplished. They're very proud of references that they see in the newspapers even today. So-and-so is going where no one has gone before. Obviously a reference to Star Trek. Things that were said on our show, things that you and I did that have come into the lexicon, into the vocabulary of the society. Proud of, but at the same time, there's got to be deep somewhere a resentment at having lost their father for some meaningful period of time.
A meaningful period of time, at least 3 years,
yeah,
probably more, and there's something they'll never recover, because that's 4 years in a formative life. It's gone. So there's if not a dearth, there's a change in the path.
We have spent the last several years consciously trying, at least I have, and I think my son and daughter have felt the same, trying to build a new relationship, really. A new relationship based on who we are now and what we know about the past. And then my alcoholism got in the way as well. That made me remote when I was around.
During the period of time when your marriage was breaking up, what did you find yourself doing?
My marriage broke up in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, and with hardly any lapse of time, I began to see the lady who is now my wife, who I dearly love and have a great relationship with and have had a wonderful, coming up to 13 years with. I still mourn the loss of the idea of the great first marriage. It was part of our generation to have a marriage that lasted and lasted and lasted. And I stayed 33 years.
Did you stay too long?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I really don't know why, except it was traditional.
No, it was part of our...
It was traditional.
We were programmed.
Yeah, exactly. It was programming. I was concerned about the kids. Finally, I thought, well, they're old enough now that we can deal with this. And in a way, to some degree, I was wrong. They were in deep shock for quite a while over it. And loyalties, question of loyalties, and how do you deal with this, and how do you deal with the separation, and one has bad feelings about the other because it was not a happy ending.
Then you come to success. Look at this. Look at this place. This is material success.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, you and your wife are so happily married.
Peace, serenity.
You know, I would think that's your search.
I sometimes think I finally got my reward, you know, for the tough times. I really do. I feel rewarded for the tough times. And I used to make promises to myself: if I ever make it, if I ever make a living, if I ever become solid, if I ever become, I will do this and I will do that.
Well, what's this and that?
Well, I mean, become a substantial member of the community, become philanthropic, become helpful to other people. And we try to do that all the time now.
Yes, I know you do.
I feel greatly blessed. Yeah.
So you've reached a serenity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
These are good times.
have remarried.
Yeah.
And
you are happy.
happy, wonderfully happy.
Yeah.
And have not stopped yearning and fighting and grasping and crawling and clawing and thinking, I can do this, I can get that, I can make this happen, or whatever it is. And I get up in the morning and I'm starting to go, you know,
Yeah.
and
Running.
The body is still there. I don't have the aches and pains that I should have. So I'm physically all right.
Yeah, well, you're a lot older than I am, though.
Yeah. Just don't feel it. So I'm still thinking the Holy Grail is ahead. You know, I still haven't made it. I'm going to
What do you dream about accomplishing?
making another film, directing, writing, producing it, making.
I don't want to direct anymore, but as you know, I'm very busy with photography these days. That's my most satisfying creative activity every day.
Why? What do you see in it?
I'd love to make that product. I love to make images. And I dream about images. I do what is referred to as fine art photography. It's a creative process. So I'm not reporting, I'm creating something in front of the camera.
And what is it you're creating? What do you define what it is you're creating?
Memory.
Memory. Oh, your memory.
My memory or a collective memory.
Okay.
Society's memory.
Something you're going to make me remember something that we all remember.
Something distant in our vague.
Young's collective memory.
That's right.
Okay.
Eros.
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 In terms of the erotic.
Yes. Love and spirituality.
Wow.
Hopefully it all comes together.
Yeah.
Hopefully you touch all those threads.
Right.
All my images are done with traditional black and white film. I do all my own lab work, my own developing, my own printing. All the silver gelatin prints.
And you have an inventory of pictures.
Oh yeah.
And what do you do? What are you going to do with it?
Well,
I mean, when
there will be a book next year, and the book will be essentially about spirituality, but hopefully combining all the other elements that we talked about.
You and I have spent more than half our lives together. I think of you as one of my dearest friends, if not my dearest.
Same.
Yeah, and I truly love you. I'm looking now, perhaps the reason I'm running as fast as I can is I see very clearly my own death. What with the death of my wife, and the lady I've married nursed her husband through cancer to his death. I see death and mortality very, very clearly. It's just over there. He's coming on. And it still doesn't relieve me of all the irritations of everyday life where I should be able to say, oh, I'm not going to let that bother me because, you know, how many years do I have left? You can count them. Very conscious of death and my fear of dying. I'm truly afraid. And when I'm asked, what am I afraid of? It's inchoate, loneliness, of loss, of aloneness. Name the thing and I'm afraid of it. I don't know how to deal with it. How are you dealing with it?
I think of it as a loss of consciousness. And I am conscious of it. I think about it. I'm not sure quantitatively that I think about it in the same terms or as much as you do, but I do think about it quite a bit. I'm aware that the years are numbered, and I'm not quite sure what the number is. Nobody can know that for sure. But, and I expect I still have some pretty good time because genetically, my parents lived into their mid-80s, and I figure I still got some time. I have a brother who's very healthy and knock wood, and he's 5 years older than me. But I do think about it. I think about the loss of relationships, the end of that. I think about the loss of creative opportunity, which I love to be creative, to see things evolve that you dream about and you can bring to fruition. I think it is important now to be making philanthropic statements, to be giving back as much as I can, as much as we can, into the community, into funding for arts, funding for children, funding for education, things that we believe in, care about, and leaving a legacy. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that it be positive and constructive and meaningful. The loss of D. Kelly meant a lot to me. I saw him as kind of an uncle figure. As I remember him, a very even-tempered, very wise gentleman who saw a lot and needed very little, or at least seemed to need very little. His life was very simple.
Yes.
He and Carolyn had this very quiet personal life, which was not a life that I would aspire to. But I did admire his serenity and his calm, at least his apparent serenity and calm, and his craftsmanship that I came to really respect over a period of years, and that was so useful in our kind of mix that it gave us both, I think, something wonderful to deal with and work with. It meant a lot to me when he was gone, and I thought that's the beginning of an end, was the way I saw it.
I think of him, my first impression is Raintree County, and the young DeForest Kelley.
Yeah.
Good-looking whippersnapper Southern gentleman, and that life is gone and lost and over.
Yeah.
And you and I are talking about it, and there'll be it'll be a lot of people who will remember for a while DeForest Kelley. But he was an actor, and he was in a hit show, and that's why he was remembered for the flicker of time,
Right.
longer than most of us,
Right.
that it's no time at all. So you live and die. And what is-
Shakespeare said it, the actor struts and frets his weary hour upon the stage and then is heard no more.
Well, I want to hear from you. Make a pact with
How
you.
does that feel?
Well, I'll visit you here.
That is an inevitability. In the meantime, I think I feel good about the fact that I think both you in your own way and I in my own way have found the energy and the lust for life each day, to do interesting and exciting and creative and productive and fun things to do in a wonderful relationship. That's the blessing of it.
True. And the curse is, for me, is I haven't done enough in all those categories.
Yeah. Well, you do a lot.
Thank you, Leonard.
Thank you.
You're getting makeup on my.
I'm sorry.